Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel where tech meets creativity, and in today's automation video we'll be looking at exceptions handling. So we'll be looking at how we deal with exceptions in our program. For anyone who doesn't know what exceptions are in the automation world, so this is how I can bring it up to you. So when we're designing bots, we follow some rules, right? So in those rules that we follow for any, like for UiPath, as you see, I'm using VB.NET. So we have syntax that we follow when you're designing them. So we could have syntax errors that normally arise at the compiler level. Let me say you're trying to run your code and it doesn't run, and then just throws an error or an exception telling you something is wrong. So that could be a syntax error. Then we could have what we call user errors, right? Where probably a user did not provide a certain input that was expected by the program, and then it throws an error, right? So, and we also have programming errors where your design, your board, it does everything, it runs without throwing an exception, but the unfortunate bit comes in at the output where you don't get the desired output. So that could be a programming error. So we have looked at the different types of errors. You've seen syntax errors, user errors, then programming errors, right? So how do we deal with them? Those different errors, how do we deal with them with the exceptions handling? So with exception handling, in case an error happens, you're telling your program how to deal with it. So we'll be looking at the activities that you could leverage in UiPath to deal with such kind of scenarios. So if I come into my activities panel here, right, so you see I have a try catch. So we'll be looking at this, how we can work with it. Then to touch more about the exceptions. So within the exceptions, so we have different kinds of exceptions. There are many. The list can go on and on, as we will see in the demo, but they're majorly categorized into two types. We have the system exceptions, or sometimes called the application exceptions. We also have the business rule exceptions. So we'll be looking at the difference between the system exceptions and also the business rule exceptions. But maybe to touch a bit about it, system exceptions, these occur within the application or the system that you're working with, right? And then the business exceptions, so whichever use case that you're working on, the person or the business that you're building a solution for, they might be having specific exceptions that not necessarily have to be errors. For example, if maybe we have a value greater than this, we don't do that. For example, we have, most of us, I'm sure we have ATM cards, right? So you see that you have limits. In a day, maybe you cannot exceed a certain threshold of withdrawing money from the ATM. So that's a business rule exception. There's no exception that it's a real error, but for security reasons, it was put there. So I'll just go ahead and jump in. So I'll come into my activities panel. I'll get my assign activity. Assign. So I'll come into my variables panel. So in my variables panel, I already have two variables here. So I have the file path and also have file paths. So the file paths, it's an array of integers, as you can see. It's an array of not array of integers, array of strings, right? And then the file path. So the task that we have is to get the file paths. So I have the folder here. It's called files. So I have in my file Excel 1, 2, and 3. These are just empty files for demo purposes, because the gist of the video is about exceptions handling. So the files are just empty. I'm just using for demonstration purposes. So you see they are just empty. So I'll be using function. So a function to get. So what I'm doing here, I'm trying to use this function to get the files within this files folder. So I'm using directories.getFiles. Then it takes in, as you see here, it says directory get files path as string. So it takes in the file path. So I'll provide this file path. Right. This is an argument, so I'll just provide the file path like so. So there. So for now, you see the file path is empty. There's nothing there. So if I just go ahead and run, so I'm running. So if I just go ahead and run, so you see I get that the path. Okay, cool. So if I'm running. So if I just go ahead and run, so you see that I'm getting the path is empty, parameter path. So it's saying exception type system.argument exception. So this is the exception that I'm getting, right? So how do I deal with that? So I could just provide the path here and it will work, but I won't do that. I'll come into my activities panel, then I'll show you how we can use the try catch to deal with this kind of situation. So if I come into, so we have different ways we can create the try catch. So one, we can create the try catch. We can surround our activity with the try catch. Just here, I drag and drop it here. You can also come on the activity, you right click on it, then it says surround with, then you select this surround with try catch. Or they also have that option of using the command, of using the keyboard shortcuts, and you know, always my favorite is the keyboard shortcut. So I've used Ctrl+T. So once I encapsulate this into my try catch, so you within my try, so you see I have the option to click on add. So when I click on add here, right? So when I catch, so this is what happened. Try. So I'm saying you try out getting the files from this folder, from the file path provided. So in the event it fails, catch for me that exception. So what exception are we catching? We're already familiar with it. It was saying argument exception. So I'm catching the exception, and once I catch the exception, so I'm able to action how I want to deal with this situation within the body of the catch. So here, what I'm doing, I'm just gonna drag my log message. So I'm gonna get my log message. So I'll just be displaying a warning. As you said, so the system.argument exception, we as RPA developers, this could be, we could understand what's happening, but for a normal user or any person that will be using your exception, your automation, this kind of message, how it was displayed, this kind of way, it might not be of value to them, right? So what do we do? With the help of this catch, I'm here able to log an informative message. That's very, so I could say no file path was provided. So you see here, so I'm just telling the user no file path that was provided. So if I go ahead and run this again, so you're going to see what's going to happen. You see, our application runs without throwing an exception, without failing. So that's number one. Exceptions handling help us to be able to run our programs gracefully without any errors. Even when errors happen, we deal with them so that our entire automation doesn't break, so that we have continuity. You saw in the first place when I ran, I got a pop-up on my screen telling me that there was an exception. But after encapsulating my activity within the try and catch, I'm able to catch the exception and log something informative to the user. So here I'm just telling them no file path was provided, and anyone can understand this. At least they're able to know that I haven't provided the path, so I'm able to come and do what? And provide the path. So if I come into files, in here, I copy the path, then I come and I do it, and I provide the path like so. So with the catch, you're able to add in multiple catches. So I'm able to even catch another here if I want, and so on and so forth. So with the system dot exception, this is the mother of all exceptions. Like all exceptions are born from this. So in the event that maybe you're not certain, like for here, we know that it was the argument exception, but in the event that you're not certain about the exception that you'll be catching, you could use the generic one, system exception. But in the event that you know, you catch the very specific one. So I could also elaborate, I could illustrate this. So let us just change this from that to system exception. Then I'm telling them this. Then as well, I'm using environment. Environment.new line, then plus I'm able to, so I just want to pick the message. So there is an object called exception that's part of the catch within the catch block dot message. So this is how I pick the message. In the older versions, you could see that the object, but in these newer versions, you're unable. For the version that I'm using, which is the community version, this is the one that I'm using, 2025.0.116. You're not able to see the object, but the object is there. It's called the exception.message. So the exception.message carries whichever message of the exception that has occurred. So if I do that and I run again, I'm running in the bug. Yeah, I call the exception. So yeah, let me do this. I first need to remove the file path so that it throws the exception. Press that with that. So I'm running back again. So you see, I'm able to get the no path was provided, and also the path using the exception objects. I'm able to pick the message of the exception which says the path is empty parameter. I just wanted to show you that, how you could use that. So the other thing I want to show you is there is an activity within still the exception handling. We call it the throw. So throw activity. So this throw, how it works, I want to show you. I need to first provide the path. So I'll provide the path here. So what I'm doing, the path is there, so I won't be getting this exception. I can remove the rest of the details here. And I leave it as that. Then after, I'll come get my for each. I'm going to grab my for each activity. So I'll come. So you're able to, you can still drop in your activities within the finally. So the finally, once we're done with handling the exception, the final block is the one that executes after everything, after the catching of the exception and actioning accordingly. The final block is what happens after. So you can drop them here, but even though you drop them outside the final block, it should work either way. So this takes in a collection, so it's already picking that I'm taking in file path. So I'll change the current item. This my iterating parameter. I'll change it to current file from current text. Then I would say if I'll get a if activity. I'll get my if activity, and I'll say current file. If the current file contains, if it contains what, I'll pick, let me say file 2, rename. I just copy the file. If the file name contains this file name, right, file 2, right, I would say I use the throw activity. So I'll just throw the same. I'll just throw, I'll say new, then I'll say business rule exception, then I'll say don't read this file. So the throw activity is able to help you to come up with your own exceptions, like to as I told you, the business rule exceptions. These are exceptions that are known within the business. For example, if this is that, don't do that. So I'm just telling my program, my bot, not to read, to throw an exception when it gets to here. So I'll run. So idea what's happening, getting the files from here. So then I'm looping through the files from here. So as I'm looping through, when it gets to file number 2, I just want to throw exception. For the other files, I'll just log, I'll just write line here. Just use write line. And then I'll say current file. I'll just print out the current file in the screen. So I'll run. So let me apply even a breakpoint so that we can follow along. So I'll apply a breakpoint F9, then run. So if I open my new panel, so if I say file paths, so you're able to see that I have 3 files in here. I'll pick them. So I'm looping through now. So I'm stepping into. So now if I say current file here, so this is tracking the current file that's being processed. So it's processing now file 1. So if I step into, it just logs the file name to the screen as we ordered it. Then it's coming to another file to check. So now the current file, if I come here, check, you see that the current file is now file 2, while throwing the exception. So if I just continue, so you see if I come in my output panel, I'm getting an exception. It's throw, it says don't read this file, and I'm able to return this to the user. So that's how you can create your own exceptions, leveraging so it's a throw, don't read this file, leveraging the UiPath. Then we have the Rethrow activity as well. I don't know whether you did see that. We have the Rethrow. So the Rethrow one, it only works within the catch block. That's number 1 to note. Then it works in the, so if I do this, if I collapse this, then I use Ctrl-D to comment it out. So how you could use the Rethrow, you see now in this part, right, I'm catching the exception of argument now, right? So if I come here, change arguments now, right? So this exception has been called in the try block. So when I come into the catch block, yeah, I do what I'm supposed to do. I do what I have to do. For example, I've done the action that I want to do, but still I want to let the user know about the exception that occurred in the try. So that's where the rethrow comes in handy. So I just drop, and you see it doesn't have anything. Everything is, I just drop the activity there. So what happens once it has read the exception has occurred, it has actioned, it has got the file, then it throws the exception again. So if I run, so I'm running in debug. So you see, exception occurred, caught it here, no file path was provided. After it was caught, then it was still thrown to us on the screen that the path is empty. So that's how the rethrow can come in handy. Yes, so far we have looked in the exceptions handling, we have looked at the try catch, we have looked at the different exceptions, we have seen the system exceptions, we have seen the business exceptions, and we've seen how we could use the throw and the rethrow activity. So we are left with two activities maybe to catch in there. So there is a retry scope activity, so I'll do a video on that. And then also there is the ContinueOnError activity, so I could demonstrate that actually the ContinueOnError. So I'll also comment this out. So the ContinueOnError, so let me say I'll use browser. So I'll pick this. So if I come into the properties, so you see we have this continue executing the activities in the automation. If this activity fails, the default value is false. So the ContinueOnError, there are a number of activities that have them. So I'm just focusing with this one. So with this, if you come here and provide a value to true, so in case an exception occurs at this point, it will also continue gracefully without breaking the entire automation. So the ContinueOnError. Yeah, so I feel like that's it for the video. So maybe a recap. So we have looked at the try catch, then the try catch and the throw, then the rethrow activities, then the ContinueOnError. So in the upcoming video, we'll look at the retry scope, how you could use the retry scope, and also the global exception handler. So in the event that an exception occurs like that you never caught, how do you handle exceptions globally? So if you come here and you see in the panel, then in the projects panel, then add, I'm sure you've seen something that says global handler. So be looking at that. Yeah, so if you did find the video useful, do hit the like button, and also don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you're notified every time I upload a video, and then subscribe. Yeah, see you in the next video. I'm out.